Yeah, that's
And
my bit.
so let's transition into things here right away. And
You could blame me for that.
well, I totally am. I'm actively blaming you for that.
Wherever the blame goes easiest.
Yeah, that's my bad. Actually, blame Microsoft or Skype or whatever.
I will. That's what I do. Is I freely blame everybody else except for myself in these sort of things,
Right.
in these sort of situations. This is one of those rare instances where like I can cast the blame elsewhere, and with a clean conscience. So I feel pretty good about that. So
Yeah, it was our fault. I feel terrible. So let's move past it.
yeah, let's go ahead and forgive and forget and move on to bigger and better things. Like the fact that tonight, in addition to having V, our late angel here on the show with us, we also have Yakov of Skinwalker Tapes, which is available on YouTube. And here's that plug for you. We have him joining us tonight to talk about the uncircumcised Skinwalker.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, Skinwalker gang. We here repping.
Mm-hmm.
Was that it? Was that the intro?
Should I say more? Or should I?
I don't know.
go
I
to
thought
my
there was going to be more.
teespring.com/stores/Yakov-Alive and buy my merch.
There we
That's the
go.
most important
That's
thing.
hype. That's
I
what
like that.
the urban slang is. That you are hype, dog.
I'm bullet.
So I don't have I'll be honest. This is something that I will blame myself for. I fell asleep tonight at 8:30. I often do. I sleep on my son's floor because he still can't sleep without somebody in his room when he goes to sleep. So I had to go to sleep on his floor, and when that happens, I sleep. Like I sleep soundly. And I panicked. I woke up in a panic. It was about 10:30. And I was having nightmares the whole time too, because if I don't take my medication, I have extreme, constant, all-night nightmares. And I woke up from a nightmare in a panic because I thought it was past time to record. I thought we had missed the show. So
Recurring nightmare of mine.
yeah, and
Missing the show.
yeah, and so I did not prepare a screen for Yakov, like when we switch between me and V, or me and Matt Squant, or me and Dave, or whatever. I don't have one for Yakov, so you'll have to forgive me for that.
Imagine a ski mask, a joint hanging from my lip, and a dirty martini.
I can do
Fair
that.
enough.
So isn't that
In
the
there.
spy from Team Fortress Classic?
Oh God, I'm not enough of a gamer for that. I can't rise up for this one.
Is that a game?
Well, shame on you. Yeah, that's exactly what he looks like. Well, except for maybe not the martini. I can't find a picture of him with the martini.
Best part.
But I got. Here's what I'll do. I'll cheat and I'll create it as we're talking, as you're kind of doing as you're doing your thing. But
You want me to tell you about my day? I'm gonna tell you
please
about
please do, and I'll go ahead and make the little picture.
Well, you're gonna enjoy this. I have some interesting information that happened to me today, and I guess this will probably solidify my my background as a degenerate for our audience. But so I canceled my Bang Bros account, right? Because it's just like too expensive at this point. I was just like, I'm not gonna pay for this anymore. It's good content, but it's just not affordable with the new apartment and all the bills, and bills pile up, and then they just take and take from your bank account, and then all of a sudden you're like in the negative because you're paying for wank stuff.
Your life force is sucked away, and you're all
Yeah.
dehydrated.
Yeah, exactly. So
You're
anyway,
at the bottom of the bag of meth.
right, and so I canceled my account for like 3 months ago. I want to say like 3 months ago. It's probably when I moved in, and they never like took away my access. Like the other day, I was like, it was on my my bookmark folder, and I was like going through deleting old bookmarks and stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, whatever, I'll check and see, just randomly, like I'll check and see if I still have access, and I still do. Like they haven't charged me in like months but for some reason I still have access to Bang Bros. So I went through the other night and just downloaded, like, tried to download the whole site before they realized.
Maybe that's one of the perks of being a top commenter.
Yeah, I know, right? They're just like, here, you use our site playing over the years. So here's just free access for the rest of your life. But I don't know.
Flyer miles, something like that.
Yeah, frequent
Tapping miles.
Yeah, freaking whacking off miles. So that was I don't know, take it as you will, but that's my good news for the day, is that I have, I guess, permanent access to Bang Bros for free.
Can I ask, how much is a subscription to Bang Bros? Like, what?
$29, I think, a month. $29. And then I think they have like a $100 a year thing, which I usually do, like, which you can do, and this is like the trick for if you have like fast internet, you can do these like $1 3-day trials to like any porno site, and then just spend like 3 days just downloading porn like crazy. Just download as much.
Luckily, it's exactly as long as my stimulant binge.
Yeah, just download as much as you can until, like, you know, the 3 days are up, and then on that third day you got to make sure that you cancel, otherwise they'll charge you for the month. So you do this for $1. This is like the secret technique of getting free porn, but, well, dollar porn.
I'll be honest, I didn't realize people were still paying for porn.
I'm with you.
Yeah,
you're that guy that keeps porn alive.
I like quality, and I know there's like these free Pornhub and whatever else. I think I know about Pornhub, and the other one I forget what it is. But like I like to have downloads. You know, I like to have, like, be able to transfer to like my, you know, portable devices and what have you. And I think from being in like deployments too. Like when I was in Iraq, dude, we had this terabyte hard drive that everybody passed around that just had a ton of porn. It was like it was like the what do you call it? Like what was that
community
thing that you
porn?
had? Community porn, yeah. And everybody passed it around, and like new videos would pop.
Circle.
Eventually, it was like, what is all this like new stuff? And then like there was one guy that went through and he like organized it. Like, he organized it by, like, you know, what you would organize the niche or fetish, if you will.
So I guess the topic for this evening is skinwankers. You growing any hair on your palms?
Segue. Good segue. Yeah. But yeah, that's what's going on in my life. Other than that, you know, I have a new mic. My dad gave me this, let me use this mic, so now I'm like clear as day. It's kind of awesome. Before I'd be like, and then Tom would go, ha ha ha, even though I know he didn't know what I was saying or whatever.
Yeah, there were sometimes. Usually, I called you out, though. I would say, like, what was it? This last episode, I said, you were like, you know what I mean? At the very, like, you said nothing for a long time, and then you were like, you know what I mean? And I said no, because I didn't hear any of what you just said.
I think that was when I was making the comment about how we call Wikipedia Wikichedia now.
Oh yeah.
Wikichedia.
It's actually a good joke. So anybody who's not laughing at that joke, shame on you.
Yeah, Wikichedia, dude. Come on. Come on. That's what I was like, you know what I mean?
So here we're gonna real quick.
ahead.
We'll do our shot because Mike in Manitoba is home at he's in bed right now, very sick. So we're going to go ahead and toast to him, and then we'll get right into the action with Yakov Skin Cranker, and
Yes.
we'll go from there. So here's to Mike.
Saloon. Saloon? Is it salute or saloon? I always thought it was saloon.
Ooh.
Nostrovia.
Yeah, Nostrovia. That's a good.
Gesundheit.
Yeah,
Right,
stroganoff.
Stroganoff. Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto. That's another one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right, Yakov, are you ready to talk? Are you ready to skin this walker?
I'm skin clapping right now, dude.
Nice.
Do this.
Well, let's see that. Let's see that purple mushroom.
That flaccid peen.
Think
Nice.
Skinwalkers have like red rockets?
Yeah, we do that too. We talk about red rockets as well.
That's good. That's good.
It's one of our go-to.
Did you Did you throw this image together?
I did.
Just like,
I lazily threw this image
Oh,
together.
that's glorious, actually. I
yeah,
love
that
it.
is awesome. That's pretty badass.
Great representation.
I love how his cell phone is like part old school telephone.
Well, it's the spy from Team Fortress Classic, so he's calling in some kind of air support, I assume.
I see. I don't have any reference point because
Team Fortress Classic is an amazing game 20 years ago. Just use that as a frame of reference.
right.
Striking Iran. That's what we're doing.
Yep, that's exactly what's going on here. And well, we're striking Iraq.
And whatever. Same thing.
Right. I mean, that's what you do. Like when Iran makes you mad, you strike Iraq, and when the United States makes you mad, you strike Iraq. So.
Zach.
So are you?
Is that like a car? Did you hear the car go
Yeah, it sounds
by
like you're
really
at a NASCAR race or something.
Raceway Park.
Are we doing this?
So tell us the Skinwalkers, man. I have
I just going into it.
Yeah,
I
not
have questions.
Yeah, let's
We'll
go ahead, V. Yeah,
You
ask
know.
your question, and then we'll go from there. We'll give you. We'll kind of help you out here, Yakov.
a
I
few things I
appreciate
did, as we do the Wikipedia, I read like a little bit about the Skinwalkers because I told somebody, I was like, yeah, we're doing the podcast, we're so cool, and doing the humble brag, the humble brag where
I
you
don't
pretend that you're
Well, what's the podcast? Oh, you wouldn't like it. It's not something.
pretend like it's not a big deal, but really you're bragging. So I was going, yeah, dude, we're doing this thing about Skinwalkers on Monday, and they go, what is that? And then I like smiled and I was like, well, I don't really know. And so then I had to Wikipedia it, and I found out it's basically, my understanding is it's something having to do with Native American female shamans or something that like can change form. They can like basically transform, or I don't know.
I don't normally hear the female thing. Originally, it comes from Navajo folklore.
Okay.
Their high-ranking medicine men would go through rituals that would allow them to take the form of animals. And even now, I'm not sure exactly in its original form if like the tale is talking about people actually morphing into animals, or if they just like take over the bodies of the animals to use them.
I wonder if this
I'm
is
not
where
actually
that
sure.
bit came from, where they go speed of a puma or form of a cheetah. you know what I'm talking about?
The
That's it, bro.
skin of a dolphin.
It's awful. Yeah.
You know
that's
what
pretty good.
I actually learned in my reading? What I like most about this setup that we do is that V comes on and gives the Wikipedia version of it, and then now well, typically I jump in and I'm like, yeah, that's actually exactly it. Let's close out the show, and then but then we do that's our recurring joke, and it's still funny to me even though we've done it every time, but. Like today, fortunately, we have somebody who's an expert on the Skinwalker, and
That's what we'll go with.
plays a mean skin flute. But he,
Yes.
but I did read something in my studies today. I actually went to the gym. I didn't want to go to the gym, and this is one of those times where you have to brag about going to the gym. I really did not want to go to the gym because I'm fat, and I don't like being fat because I know I'm gonna get diabetes and lose my leg. Which would like save a lot of time that I would spend at the gym normally. You know what I mean? I could use that as an excuse. Well, I can't. What am I going to do at the gym? I don't have a leg. And also I'd be able to have a prosthetic leg, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm a disabled vet, and then people would just assume that my leg being lost was because of like some kind of like I stepped on a mine or something. But in reality,
Is that stolen valor? I don't know.
because
Vietnam.
but in reality, it was because I just ate a lot of snacks after dark or whatever.
Cheeseburger.
Yeah, and so what I did was I did some research today on YouTube as I was at the gym and I was on the treadmill or whatever. That's what I do when I'm on the treadmill to pass the time. Is normally I watch Steven Crowder, but today I was watching.
For some reason, just pictured you on a treadmill, like running but eating a Twinkie at the same time.
Yeah. Oh boy, if I could bring food with me to the Y and like get away with it, I'd bring like a whole lunchbox with sandwiches, candies. It would look like my son's lunchbox when he packs his
Just
own
like
lunch.
Canceling out the exercise by eating.
And that's the thing is like when you're on the treadmill, you really only burn like 150, 200 calories if you do like a full 30-minute run or whatever. But so it really doesn't even make up for anything that you eat. Like a packet of, I'm on like that Weight Watchers thing where you just like look at the calories before you eat it, so you can be like, yeah, this is gonna put me over, which is the point of Weight Watchers. And but like nothing is under 200 calories anymore. So it's kind of like by going to the gym for, you know, a half an hour run, you're really only buying yourself a soda, one soda. And that's how I justify having my one soda a day. I didn't quit drinking soda cold turkey. I had to bring it down to just one a day, and I actually lost 20 pounds doing that, believe it or not. But anyways, I was on the treadmill and I was watching some Skinwalker videos so I could have some more information to interject into the thing. And you know, the most fascinating thing is we have a candidate running for president right now. She's part of the Democratic Party. Elizabeth Warren is actually one.
Skinwalking right now, huh?
Yeah, she's a 1028th Skinwalker. I found out.
Really?
If you can believe that, yeah. One.
Well,
It's between 164th
like,
and 1028th.
we gotta like backpedal though. Like I need like an expert description of what exactly skinwalkers are, because I still just think they're like people that can like take the form of a puma.
Well, I'll tell you, the strongest form of skinwalking is being lily white and being able to get all the benefits of being an Indian.
Oh,
Well,
that's
that's
some
how-
shape-shifting right
Yeah,
there.
well, that's the real Skinwalker. That's the undisputed Skinwalker.
the Indians are the Indians. They're Native Americans. We call them Indians. They're not even Indians.
Well, you know what's funny
Indians.
is they've accepted that and even like it's one of those things where like people who aren't from that or of that culture get offended, but everyone within that culture is just like, okay, yeah, we're the
Yeah,
Indians. Like, what do you want from me? Like, you're changing our name again? Like, because originally we were blah 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 blah, whatever it was. We were the Navajo, we were the Apache, we were this, we were that, and that's what they referred to themselves as. We were people, and that was it. We didn't have an additional name. Then you called us Indians. Now you're calling us indigenous people, and now you're calling us the original
Native
Americans, and now you're calling us the Native Americans. And like, they're like,
The red
we're
man.
Indians. Like, we're okay with being called the Indians because, gosh darn it, that's what Christopher Columbus called us back in 1492 when he, or for them, whatever year it was. Like, I don't know what calendar they ascribed to. Probably the Mayan calendar, which I don't even understand. I know it ended. It ended a few years ago.
Ryan Tremblay said, isn't V part of Slappa Joe?
No, Slapaho. You're part of the.
You know what's funny about Native Americans is they are the one, like the only race that literally has a race card that they can pull. Like you get, if you're like a Native American, you get this card that like says you're like actually Native American. And like you do get benefit. Well, this is my understanding, of course. I don't.
Oh yeah,
I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Native Americans get a card that says they're like legit, even if you're like 164th, like old girl or whatever. What was her name?
Elizabeth
Wilson.
Warren. Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Warren. Do I have to say it like? Remember like last week when I had to say the same thing like 4 times, and you're like, I just don't even know.
Tongue.
You're talking about this card. I'm just wondering if that means if that like gives them immunity to just stealing Listerine.
It gives them a discount on
Personally.
cigarettes.
Discount.
That's
Yes.
definitely
No, it
allows
actually what it
up
does.
casino.
Yeah, they get a certain profit or a certain amount from the casinos. They get access to the reservations and all sorts of stuff. But then they also like you can use that. I think like it's not so much a literal card that they show like Tom Miller, Navajo Private Eye. It's more like you put it down on your paperwork saying, yes, I'm Native American, Indian, or whatever of such and such tribe. But then you also have to have like citizenship of that tribe. It's a very complicated process, which is where Elizabeth Warren screwed up because she was putting that she was Native American on all of her paperwork to get into like Harvard Law, get employment, get her law license.
She was pulling the race card.
Yeah, and then it turns out she didn't have it, like she hadn't earned it or whatever. And she was so bold that she was like, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get tested. Get my genes tested.
That was a wonderful moment.
She didn't go to enough. What are those called? Powwows. She didn't go to enough powwows.
Yeah. She didn't have citizenship, and then she had to apologize to the Native American community because she had been. And she's like, I've never used it to gain anything. And then it shows on every single one of her documents, like to practice law in Texas to get into Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
In the newspaper, they were like the first colored or person of color. Oh man, I almost said something horrible. The first
Those colors.
the first person of color to get a teaching position at Harvard Law or Harvard's law school, like all sorts of crazy stuff. And so she was using it that whole time, but then she comes out and says, well, I didn't actually use it, because now she knows that she's only like, she's less Native American than like 90% of the American population who's never used it to their advantage. So
I'm just wondering if she realizes it's 2020 and you can identify as whatever race you want. You go, girl.
Yeah, that's true.
We stand by you in your fraudulent Native American identification, Elizabeth Warren.
In fact, I'm the blackest dude in this call.
It's true. It's true.
I like identifying as a Decepticon whenever people ask me. I go, what do you identify as? You know, a robot that transforms into a car or some vehicle or whatever, or what have you, motorcycle. I always think about it. That's probably not something common for most people, but I always think about it, dude. If I was a transformer, what type of vehicle would I transform into? That's a question for the ages, dude. Think about it. What would you transform into? What would you be? What kind of
Lex Express?
It would have to be a plane, right? That or a rocket ship? I would transform. Well, I don't know. See, now I'm curious because
see, it's a question for the ages.
Because if you want to be a rocket ship with like super boosters, how much fuel do you have? How far can you get? How fast can you go? Can you breathe in space as this robot? You know?
Well, I always picture more of like a moped, Tom.
Oh, I definitely would be a moped.
Or like a station wagon.
You know, that's like one of those. That's one of those things where like you have these great dreams of like what you want to be, and then when it turns out the time comes, all of a sudden you transform. You're thinking, I'm gonna be a rocket ship. I'm gonna be fucking awesome, and then all of a sudden you transform for the first time and you're a moped. Like that's the story of my life.
Imagine being a skinwalker and you think you're gonna become like a badass wolf or something, and you transform. You're just like a rabbit, and you immediately get just like consumed by a more badass animal, right?
What? Are there any cool stories about skinwalkers? Anything that's like modern, like, you know, like the cryptid stuff we talk about, where it's like, oh, there was a sighting of you know, the Wendigo or something. Was there anything like that recently? Where
the problem is that the skinwalker phenomenon has become so tied to the internet, where previously it was the medicine man who could transform into the animal to enact certain services. Maybe flying would be useful to go scout the area ahead of you, or you know, you can imagine like without modern technology that these things could be useful. But the thing is, in the internet days, it's becoming more monstrous. It's less of the human with the powers or whatever, and it just becomes a straight up monster that's lurking in the woods. That's where things like the Fleshgate come from and stuff like that. So you have all these creepy pastas about that. You don't hear too many like sightings of this stuff. And there's one example, the Skinwalker Ranch, where you hear a lot of it. And I have a lot of information about that. I don't know if it's time to go into that or not.
Jump right in. We're if you go ahead.
Hold the phone. I always forget that you guys can still hear me, but the folks at home can't. Not that they care, I'm sure. But I always turn off the mic whenever I'm not actively talking. That way I'm not, you know, that way you don't hear the
the
fat guy breathing or whatever.
Yeah.
So is that pretty much all we need to know, Yakov, going into the conversation about the skinwalkers? Is there a way that we can talk real quick about the difference between the skinwalker versus the Fleshgate? Is that what you called it?
Yes.
Sounds like some kind of like criminal conspiracy, like how everything just has the word gate after it, like Gamergate, Comicsgate, Russiagate,
I never thought about
Watergate, or whatever. But,
sounds like something I watched on Bang Bros recently, to be honest.
Speaking of Bang Bros, let's
like the Skinwalker, the Wendigo, and the Fleshgate are always conflated. I think in my mind, the Skinwalker and the Wendigo are a very, very similar thing, if not like just slightly different take on the same thing. Whereas the Skinwalker has to go through very severe rituals to attain his power, supposedly rituals that are basically absolutely fucking disgusting to people of our modern sensibilities. Things I would call the left-hand path, which are usually used to shock the person so badly that they lose the sense their sense of like individuality. They lose their sense of duality between the world and themselves, and then like that's when you attain the powers, when you realize that you are everything and all powers within your consciousness, stuff like that. So like it's basically the medicine man has attained to such an ability that he can manipulate time and space.
That would be awesome. That would be friggin' awesome, being able to manipulate time and space.
Now, this takes me back to like the reptilian stuff you guys were talking about last week. Like, I don't know if there's some sort of thing going on in there, because it's very similar to the transforming thing. But without getting into that, the Wendigo, I think it's kind of the same thing as the Skinwalker, in that the Wendigo is a man that becomes a monster through
that's a Native American thing too, right?
Yes,
Isn't
Algonquin.
Yeah.
Where the Skinwalker is Navajo, the Wendigo is Algonquin. It's more, it's up in Canada, in the colder regions. It's associated with greed and starvation and endless hunger. It seems to me, if I was to say it's all just like a fairy tale, it's a deterrent from cannibalism. So it's like you're living in your tribe, and when winter comes, that sucks. It sucks. There's a good chance people are going to start starving. But I think what the Wendigo in that sense it's a warning against cannibalism. But the strange thing about all of this, though, is that the rituals that you go through to become the Skinwalker are like killing a family member. And
that sounds interesting. There's a ritual you have to go through to become the Skinwalker.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
you have to kill somebody who's close to
entail?
you. Right? It's somebody that's close to you.
Someone close to you, a family member, a close friend, someone like that. There's usually aspects of cannibalism in with that.
So,
I've heard different stories.
Like getting
I've heard
the
of
soul
necrophilia
stone
with it.
Or you trying to make the Infinity Gauntlet, like getting the soul stone. You have to kill someone close to you. You have to kill what's her name, Gamora.
Yeah, you have to kill that Zoe Saldana, right?
Yeah, the green chick.
Yeah.
Oh, she's hot.
That'd be a tough one. Well, I mean, this is taking us back to Bang Bros, right? She's not really his daughter, so let's be real. Like, do you think Thanos was
raping her?
Do you think he was skinwalking to his daughter in the shower? You know what I'm saying?
I think purple peen touched green vagina.
Oh.
Ugh. Yeah, that's.
Do you think Thanos's? Do you think Thanos? What do you think Thanos's penis looks like? Like, do you think it was just a darker shade of purple on the tip, or what?
Looks like a California raisin.
Probably looks like a big baby arm hanging along. What is a baby arm clutching an apple?
It would have had to have been pretty big, I'd assume. But Yakov, go ahead and continue. Yeah. The infinity condom.
That's a good one. That's good.
Thank you.
No, but continue with what it entails. That's what I'm interested in. What does it entail to become a Skinwalker?
It's hard to say because the rituals are very much shrouded in secrecy to this day. And like you can't go and talk to, supposedly, I've never done this. You can't go and talk to Indians about this because you're not supposed to even like talk about the Skinwalker because it draws them in.
Really?
So it's a very hush thing. So the ritual usually it entails killing someone close to you. Then there's usually another aspect of something fucked up like cannibalism or necrophilia involved. And then there is the choosing of an animal skin along the way. I'm not sure exactly how all this goes together, but I think the real significant thing about the ritual is that the Wendigo is doing much the same thing, albeit unknowingly. When the Wendigo, when he goes through with murdering someone close to him and then eating the corpse, it's because he's starving and it was desperation. It was a selfish act in a desperate time. So he goes through the same initiation without being aware of it. And because he wasn't aware of it, he can no longer control it. And that's why the Wendigo becomes its own monster. It doesn't go back and forth like the Skinwalker is able.
So Wendigo is like part man, part deer, part tree or whatever.
Like,
yeah,
that's like the newer conception.
the scientific explanation was that he's part man, part deer, part tree. So
Right.
Yeah, the antlers and stuff. I think that's a newer thing. But the basic idea is the same: is that it's a monstrous human who is now basically, you know, a cannibal, or he's out to get people or something like that.
So kind of like the boogeyman
Yes.
of Native American sort of thing.
The Wendigo, it has very much those vibes. The Skinwalker, not exactly so much, because it's still like that it's a person. It could be anyone. But the Wendigo very much has those vibes. And then when you get to the Fleshgate, it's just full on boogeyman monster. The interesting thing about the Fleshgate is that the name means the same thing as Skinwalker. Flesh and skin, and then walk and gait. Like the gait, your gait is how you walk.
Right.
So
it's like GAIT or whatever.
Yes.
Gait.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
see, I know words.
It's the same thing, but it
Dave
is.
Outlandish would be proud of you today.
I know.
It's the reverse of what a Skinwalker is.
So what exactly is Fleshgate? Is that just like another term for Skinwalker? Or?
No. Fleshgates were invented in the internet age with creepypastas, and where the Skinwalker is a man that becomes a beast. A Fleshgate is some sort of beast, some sort of monster that's trying to mimic an animal or a human in order to lure you into it, lure you into the tree line to consume you or something.
Lure you into it like it's trying to seduce you. And then that's you were talking about necrophilia to become a Skinwalker. These other types of Fleshgates are actually bestiality.
It's like kissing the frog. It needs to get fucked and turn back.
To become a Skinwalker, okay, let's pedal back. To become a Skinwalker, you have to bang a dead body?
So according to some accounts, some of them are, sometimes it's just the murder. Sometimes it's just cannibalism.
People out there that would be okay with that. Which, to be honest, who's getting hurt, really? You know.
So now I'm thinking, you've got me thinking here. You say some accounts say that it's just the murder, and some of them say that it requires necrophilia. Do you think that's situations in which somebody like do you think that came from somebody murdered somebody and then had sex with the body, and they were like, oh no, this isn't what it looks like. I'm actually I'm trying to become the Skinwalker. So it's not like I was just having sex with this dead body just because I wanted to have sex with the dead body. Come on. Like, I wanted to be the Skinwalker. But like it's just because they're embarrassed. Do you think that has something to do with it, or do you think that's a possibility?
I think it depends on the person. Now, when I look at this, like I said, I take it back to left-hand magic, and I apply it to the people that I know practice left-hand magic. I look to the Aleister Crowleys of the world. I look to the Agori in India. The Agori are a very interesting example, because in Hinduism, the whole thing is to find oneness. And when you realize everything is one, you realize that God is within you, and you know that leads to enlightenment. That's the idea in Hinduism. Mm-hmm. Usually you want to go like sit by the river and meditate for that. The Agori, no, they live in the graveyards, and they eat dead bodies. They burn their clothes and cover themselves with ash. They'll just chop off their fingers just because they don't associate as their individual body. And like that's what they use to break through to the other side. And I see the Skinwalker ritual as much the same way. So it's not like you have to go step 1, step 2, step 3. Every individual is going to be different. And basically you have to have your psyche shattered to the point where total ego death occurs. And then the idea is, once you no longer identify as your body, you identify as like the universal mind, and then you can control matter.
Man, that would be awesome.
Yes.
So
but you got to fuck a body.
But you gotta. So it just depends on how pure you are, or how like unique you feel you are at the beginning of this journey into Skinwalker-ism, right? So like,
I suppose
say I'm like a person of, I consider myself very, unique, even though I'm not. I'm like I'm cut from the same cloth as every single other person in the universe. Like, everybody is exactly the same, and there's no unique snowflakes anymore.
Exactly.
However. I consider myself, in my own being, to be like this super original guy who started a podcast that already existed in like 40,000 other paranormal podcasts. But I consider I would have to go through more degenerate type stuff in order to become a Skinwalker. And by the way, we're sitting here talking about skinwalking, and Yakov said that you know, when you talk about skinwalkers, it draws them in, which is what scares away a lot of these Navajo individuals from talking about the legend. Megabit Banshee in the chat said, rule number 1 of Skinwalker Club is you do not talk about Skinwalker Club. So I felt that was worth bringing up because it's a funny joke. I should have stolen it, and then because like nobody can see the chat after it closes out or whatever. I could have stolen that, and then people who watch the replay are like, "Oh man, that Tom, he's so funny. He's such a unique snowflake. He definitely needs to eat and have sex with dead bodies." But no, that was a good joke, Megabit. Thank you for contributing.
It's like you to do the Skinwalker thing. I imagine it like you maybe accidentally killed someone or something, and something happens, and then you do that thing where you go, well, no one's gonna get hurt if I just bang it, you know, like whatever, right? It doesn't matter, like who's gonna know, right? And then after that you go, well, they could probably find my semen up in there, and so then you go, well, I'll just eat the whole thing.
And then you gotta eat your own jizz. That's the worst.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
That's a terrible idea, dude. Why would you do such a thing? Why would you recommend doing such a thing?
Don't eat someone's body that has your jizz in it. That's what it comes down to.
That's the takeaway from tonight's episode is don't eat the dead body with your jizz.
After you banged the dead body.
So is the rake also part of this whole Fleshgate Wendigo?
Yes.
What you call it?
Yes, it is.
Ryan actually asked that, I believe. So let's talk about that too. Like let's talk rake just briefly because we'll do an episode on the rake later. Maybe we've already done one on the Wendigo. Maybe we'll do one on the Fleshgate, and we can do one on the rake later. So just give us like a very brief rake explanation,
the rake
if you would.
Goes well with the Fleshgate. Where like the Fleshgate, it shares a lot of those Skinwalker attributes, then reinvents it. The rake is similar to that with the Wendigo. The image of the rake is a very pale, spindly, what's the word I'm looking for? Gaunt, more than gaunt, like just flesh and bones creature that's crawling around on all fours. It's humanoid, but it's not human, and it gives you that uncanny valley feeling that all of these creatures basically do, and that's like the core of why they're so scary.
Mm-hmm.
So the rake, it reminds me of the Wendigo in that it looks like it's starving. It's just that monster that's creeping around in the tree line. And on my show, Skinwalker Tapes, we've shown a lot of videos of rake encounters, and it's always very, very creepy. The way they move, the way they sit at the tree lines, just stalking. It's clearly a take on that whole thing, but it's definitely its own thing too. Because I guess if you go back to like the original rake creepypastas, it's not exactly like that. But as it's been more fleshed out, it's become more and more of the amalgamation of the Skinwalker.
What is it with these cryptids and like hanging out in the tree line? Doesn't Bigfoot and like Wendigo do the same thing? They like hang out at the tree line.
Well, maybe Bigfoot is just a
boxing.
Skinwalker. That's been a theory in my mind for a while.
So what? Let's talk about that then. Is Bigfoot part of this whole situation
He's involved
as well? Is the Bigfoot actually a Skinwalker? And what happens? What also part 2 of the question, which is totally unrelated, because Ryan asked. What happens when a Skinwalker dies as the animal that it is pretending to be? Does it remain the animal and is found later as like an animal, or does it turn back into a human like a werewolf when you kill? Because you never find dead werewolves, you find dead people, right? And then like you never know if that person was a werewolf before they died. It's just part of that transformation, or even like Hellboy, right? When well, I don't want to spoil the opening scene, but when that happens, but like, do they transform back to their human form, or do they remain the animal? Like, is it like Freddy Krueger, where like if you die in your dreams, you die in real life? If you die as the Skinwalker as a bird, do you die in real life as a human? Discuss.
I'd go with the old werewolf trope on that one. I feel like they're probably the same phenomenon, just being I can't even tell if I believe in this shit or not. Sometimes I'm just entertaining it because it's a goddamn good time. But like, if I got a gun to my head and I'm saying like, what do they do? I'm just gonna go with the werewolf trope. They probably turn back. That's probably
We
right.
enjoy speculation though, especially in things like this. Like, well, like I was telling Tom today, actually, like I haven't experienced anything paranormal or anything weird, and I would really like to,
Yeah.
you know. And so when we discuss like cryptids or paranormal, or even like when we go into like conspiracy, it's always fun just to speculate, you know, just speculate.
That's the best thing about doing a freaking paranormal show. Like, there's other areas where I feel like I have some expertise. Like, I've dabbled in like religious type things. I can do politics. But the thing about paranormal, like, who gives a fuck if I'm wrong? Like, who's gonna come argue? If anyone who comes and argues with me about this shit, I'll just be like, "What? Why are you taking this so seriously, stupid?" It's such an easy out. It's amazing.
Well, that's like quantum physicists, right?
Yeah.
Anybody who's into theoretical quantum physics, if you can back it up at all, like, and that's what a lot of them do, is they have this stuff that is either extremely difficult to disprove or can't be disproven, right? So it's kind of the same thing with theology. People want to pick on theologists or theologians, and they want to say, well, you know, you don't know if it's all based on faith, and, you know, there's like plenty of stuff that can disprove it, but there's not enough to completely disprove it. So like your argument really, it means nothing to me, because I can't sit here and totally disprove it. Okay, well, the same thing is true of theoretical quantum physics,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, a lot of that stuff. I mean, it's all based on math that, you know, you can be like, well, okay, yeah, I mean, the math checks out, which is actually what Einstein said. He's like, your math is good, but your physics is bad. And then come to find out, quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and all that is actually all true, and they've accepted it as an official scientific study or field of study. So like the same is true, I think, of all of this. Like, you can sit here and say, well, there's no such thing as ghosts. Okay, prove it. Well, I can't. Can you prove that they exist? There's more evidence that they exist than there is that they don't exist. You know what I mean? So like the same is true of any of these cryptids. I mean, well, how come we haven't found a dead one? Well, especially with skinwalkers, this is going to be especially difficult to prove, because whether they die as a human or die as their animal, you come across a dead wolf in the woods, you're like, oh, bummer, a dead wolf, or whatever. Or like, oh, you find a dead body and you're like, oh, bummer, here's a dead guy.
Dude. That's a really good point. I didn't think of that. That's like that would certainly answer the question. You come across like a dead rat and you're like, probably it was a fucking skinwalker, and then you just stomp on it.
Like how we do, like how we always blame other things. We're like, oh no, it was one of them damn reptoids.
Reptiles. Fucking reptiles and everything.
So
yeah,
that's one of the problems with cryptozoology, I'd say, is that, like, first of all, with cryptozoology, the second you discover one of these creatures, it's no longer a cryptid. It's just zoology at that point. But then it's like when you conflate all of these other things with cryptozoology, when you throw Mothman in there and Dogman in there and Skinwalkers in there, when we're talking about these things, we're not talking about zoology, you know? So it's misleading. And that, you know, you can't help it. They're cryptids at this point. It's just what it is. Right. But like, it's just set up to never be proven, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it sure is fun to talk about it, though. Like, it's fun to speculate, you know, and just go, well, it could be this or it could be that, and who knows. And then like, it's what I find most fun about this, since I started being on this show like pretty consistently, is that we take all these theories and like ideas that like everybody's, you know, gathered all over the internet and whatnot,
and we talk about their penis.
Yeah, and then we talk about their. Well, yeah,
no homos.
Accumulate our own, and we go, well, it could be this too, and it's just like what Tom just said about, well, it'd be hard to prove a skinwalker, because if it dies as a human, it's still just a dead human, but if it dies as an animal, you just see an animal. So to me, that's like a logical theory, and like I'm so skeptical about everything. I'm always like, come on, dude, aliens, like for real, you know, like come on. But then again, like I don't know, you know, so I can't really say. But then when there's a piece of information that comes up like that goes, well, I guess yeah. It's like that. I'm like skeptical, but I'm easily won in some sense, I guess.
You're like the worst skeptic ever. You're like the guy who's like, I don't believe in Bat Boy. You know, I don't believe in, you know, Hillary Clinton assassinating so and so. But then as soon as you see the tabloid at the grocery store, you're like, well, I don't know. Bat Boy was seen. He was just seen with Elvis. You know, it's hard to say.
Bat Boy.
That's
Yeah,
like
that's
growing
good.
up. Bat Boy was the guy. Like he was the cryptid. You know, you always read about him in the tabloids when you were walking out of the grocery store with your folks. You know, you always saw Bat Boy, and you're like, I wonder what he's up to. I hope he's okay
I missed
wherever he's
that.
at. You
Bad
know.
boy.
So
Yeah, he's
Yakov,
F in the chat for Bat Boy.
so Yakov, could you tell us a little bit about Skinwalker Ranch? What is that? You know, we hear about it all the time. We hear it's, you know, haunted.
Hmm.
We hear aliens. We hear there's a lot of stuff going on at Skinwalker Ranch. How was it dubbed Skinwalker Ranch and not Ghostwalker Ranch or Alien Walker Ranch?
Pretty damn good marketing, huh? Go into that a little. The Skinwalker Ranch, and here I'm going full Wikipedia mode for about 2 seconds here.
Wikichedia. We're calling it Wikichedia. Man.
Skinwalker Ranch, also known as Sherman Ranch, is a property located on approximately 512 acres southeast of Ballard, Utah, that is reputed to be the site of paranormal and UFO-related activities. Its name is taken from the Skinwalker of Navajo legend. So, it seems to me, I spent a good deal of time researching this and who owned the property, what was happening while they owned it, and all of this stuff. The Skinwalker part, it seems to be a recent thing. I would place that in 1996 with I forget who wrote the book, investigative journalist George Knapp. He was the one, I believe he was writing for the Las Vegas Mercury, I believe. And he popularized the ranch in 1996. And that's when Robert Bigelow, who is a American entrepreneur. I don't know how rich this guy is, but surely very, very rich.
Robert
he got
Bigelow,
a hold of
male
this thing.
gigolo.
You know what I was thinking is, you know what else happened in 1996 is the Wu-Tang dropped the 36 Chambers of Death, kid. It was just like full of non sequiturs. Sorry, I can't help it. You said 96, and I was like, yeah, I was listening to Wu-Tang. 96, son.
I was in 6th grade. I was actually hitting on a girl. This girl named her name was Joni Dressler. And you know, I'm just at a point where I'm like, I don't care. I'll just say people's names live on the air now. Instead of like back in the day when we did that suicide thing, and I was like, you know, and I edited it with John Cena, but which the people at home still haven't heard, which is funny because remember that was the time that the audio didn't work, so they didn't even get to hear it.
Right.
So they still don't know. But remember I told you that story about that girl Joni Dressler, where like I had this big crush on her when I was a kid in middle school and then like a little bit in high school. But then I moved away for a year and then I came back to another area in Wisconsin and I happened to visit my old town and I saw her she was working at Subway and I go, oh, and in my mind, like, you know, I didn't say it out loud. I was like, oh, Joni, you have really let yourself go. But then I saw my reflection and it was like a perfect camera transition where all of a sudden it showed my reflection in the Subway sneeze guard. And I was like, damn, Tom, you have really let yourself go. Like, I was just like the most judgmental person in that moment.
I love that story. I tell that story to people.
It's
like
yeah, it's one of those coming of age stories. It's a tale as old as time, I think. So, Yakov, go ahead and continue. I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt you with that story, but about Joni Dressler, you know, may she rest in peace, I assume.
Big shout out to Master Roshi in chat. George Knapp is a guest co-host for Coast to Coast AM. Master Roshi is a regular on Skinwalker tapes. Big thanks to my boy. So yeah, that's where George Knapp was from. He was the one who popularized the Skinwalker Ranch moniker. As you can see, as I said before, it was the Sherman Ranch. Who was the original guy who ended up selling it to Bigelow and his corporation. Now, one thing I find very interesting is that when Bigelow originally bought the ranch, he was running the National Institute for Discovery Science, which was an organization that he started to seriously study fringe science, paranormal topics, and notable ufology. So that's very interesting. It's very overt that you got this super rich dude just going there with this organization. And it's weird because he was working with people who were like ex-government in like the Department of Defense and everything, weird stuff. But then eventually down the line, on paper, the ranch switched ownership from what did I just say? The National Institute for Discovery Science to Bigelow Aerospace. And now Bigelow Aerospace, it seems like to me, they dabble in like all sorts of weird stuff. It seems like a government contracting thing. Like, it seems perfect for that. And I know a lot of people involved with this were former government. The weirdest part is, like, you got guys who were like former Department of Defense, former like heads in like the Navy, and like these people were heads of researching things at the Skinwalker Ranch. And then since then, they've gone on to like join up with Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Academy and everything.
Do you think that like anybody ever has made the mistake that like they were trying to find Skywalker Ranch and they accidentally ended up at Skinwalker Ranch?
Look, man, I'm just here to see the new Phantom Menace movie.
Yeah, where's Chewbacca? This isn't Chewbacca.
Well, maybe there was a Chewbacca there. Like,
oh yeah, it was
that's where Chewbacca came from. Was the idea that somebody transformed into a Bigfoot.
That's got to be legit. That sounds legit.
That's the backstory. I guess, that's just letting you know.
What I'm saying here, it's all adding up to being just a place that's been of high interest to people who are interested in the paranormal, and then up to like government experimentations and stuff. I got a little bit of a timeline I would like to go through for Skinwalker Ranch, if that's cool.
Please do. That keeps us on. Dude. Yeah, we're happy. You're in charge here. We're just the guys. We're the
floor. We have a tendency to do this.
You have the floor. We just interject the non sequiturs and silly jokes and stuff. That's really
feel free.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I got, 1905. The first Skinwalker Ranch settlers, John and Emma Myers, built a small homestead on the property. The Locke family also moves onto the west side of the property. Around this time, the Locke family recalls a noteworthy occurrence of a strange visitor to the property. The stranger arrived out of nowhere and was wearing time period appropriate clothing. However, underneath it was a dazzling blue one-piece outfit. He asked for water and had a lengthy conversation with the family. He then walked off and disappeared. The assumption is that this bizarre figure told the Locke family where not to dig on the property. This story was so amazing, apparently, that it was passed down to future generations. So that's the first thing from 1905. And it's interesting because this strange figure is a common occurrence on Skinwalker Ranch, someone who just pops up out of nowhere. He usually doesn't communicate. If he does, it's very brief, and then he disappears out of nowhere. So that goes back that long ago. Then in 1906 to 1911, underground rumblings and explosions are heard both day and night around the ranch. So that's like, most people want to go in a UFO direction with that. I almost want to wonder, like, was the government digging there that long ago? Did they have the capability to do so? I don't know.
I think that's definitely a possibility. I mean, we talked about what did we talk about, the reptilians last time, and they how they've been around for so long. You know, there's definitely the possibility that they were providing the technology needed in order to do that. So
have you ever heard the sky sounds? You'll see videos of you'll see like trumpets in the sky, stuff like that. Have you ever seen these videos?
No, I've never seen the videos, but I'm aware of the, that's part of Revelation.
I have
prophecy,
a theory.
So
yes, that's where people like to go. I have a theory about it that's a little different from that. I think maybe these sounds are coming from beneath us, and maybe they're digging freaking cities and bases beneath us, and the sound is coming up from below us, hitting the atmosphere, bouncing back, and it's confusing our senses. And that we like, because it always sounds to me like scraping metal on metal. That's what it always sounds like to me.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about. What are you talking about? Trumpets in the sky?
Man,
is this like Revelation type shit, or?
That is one take on it. Yes. If you guys are watching in chat, like if you search trumpets in the sky, I bet it'll come up. I bet it will. It's good stuff. Very, very weird. But I when I read about these underground rumblings and explosions, it just takes me to that. It makes me think of that. And something we're hearing even today.
Trumpets in the sky, huh?
So 1930, Christopher Locke reveals that the first cattle mutilation occurred on the ranch, going to 1930. Now we're getting into weird UFO territory. And then in the 1950s to 1960s, Junior Hicks, a local, reports a surge of UFO reports in the Wichita Basin. However, Skinwalker Ranch itself historically has little to no recorded activity. However, of note, the ridgeline directly behind Skinwalker Ranch is given the nickname Werewolf Ridge by the locals for reasons lost to history. And there we are in like Dogman territory. So just like, and I am perfectly willing to speculate that Bigfoot is a skinwalker, and that's why you can't find him. You see this half man, half beast thing, and it's just gone. I think Dogman is the same thing, potentially.
I mean, it could answer the question of pretty much all cryptids if you look at it like
so
that.
easy.
Yeah, pretty much all cryptids.
That's why my show's called Skinwalker Tapes.
It's pretty interesting, and like it really makes me think about the most Indian tribe. I don't know, and I watch movies. You know, that's my thing, is I watch movies, so everything is like a reference to a movie. But immediately I think of like old movies that I've seen where like Native American tribes are wearing like pelts of like animals. You know, like they have like the lion, or not the lion. They have like the wolf on their head or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Where they it's like they're wearing like a bearskin suit, basically.
Well, that was
and that's
the
what
thing that they talked about in one of the things that I watched today. They were saying that when you are a skinwalker, you wear the skin of whatever animal it is that like you're a furry, right? Yes. Like you have your fursona, and you know, they wear their little like wolf skin, and then in order to determine, like, nobody knows who the skinwalkers are. They're kind of like the KKK. Like even the KKK members didn't know who the other KKK members were because
they're all feds. Don't worry about it.
Right. So they would wear their costume, but like if you wanted to know who was the skinwalker, you could just look at the guy who's wearing the wolf costume or whatever. You'd be like, right. Oh, that guy's a friggin' skinwalker. But nobody ever knew. Or at least
thinks he's one.
But that's one of the things that they were saying. Now I don't want to. Let's get back to the Skinwalker Ranch, and let's keep talking about that there, Yakov. And I know you're on a timeline.
Liberals and their Skinwalker agenda. So anyway, 1970, cattle mutilation suddenly become common in the Wichita Basin and around the ranch. 1996, Desert News article broke the story about the strange activity on Skinwalker Ranch, and that's George Knapp right there. So the thing is, prior to that, there is nothing really skinwalkery going on except maybe Werewolf Ridge. It's all like UFO stuff, right? Basically, and then some other unexplainable stuff, but nothing screams skinwalkers until 1996 when George Knapp breaks the story. Then also in 1996, weeks after the Desert News article posts, billionaire Robert Bigelow buys Skinwalker Ranch for a mere $200,000 and promptly moves his NIDS team of scientists onto the ranch. And they were the people who were they were explicitly researching paranormal activity. Then in 2004, NIDS is replaced by BAASS, Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies. The assumption is that they had a more clandestine mission statement than NIDS and a government sponsor on the horizon. That to me is very, very interesting because of the extreme change on paper, while in reality nothing has changed, except the government got involved.
That's definitely suspicious, and I mean, you can always kind of like, I'm sure if you lined up certain timelines, you could determine that there was something that happened there in addition to the change of the name or whatever.
I would bet they got government funding.
So yeah. Who is this Deuce Bigelow billionaire guy?
Richard Bigelow, the billionaire. I know very little about him, and I pulled up Wikipedia. I'm looking at his whole thing. I smashed that early life button. I didn't see anything suspect. So yeah, I don't really know. This is the first because I was doing a bunch of research into this lately, and this is what I've got. It's gonna be a whole other thing just to figure out who the hell this guy is. I bet. Oh, you know what? Master Roshi said something in chat. Bigelow Aerospace supposedly has the contract to make modular habitation units for Moon or Mars colonization. So this is no joke. I don't know exactly who he is, but he's no joke.
Oh, isn't that what's his name? Who's the guy that made that silly car? What's his name?
Elon Musk.
Yeah, Elon Musk.
Car, the Cybertruck. Dude, that car would be retarded if the world wasn't actually ending right now. That's what I want to be in.
Yeah, that guy, isn't he the Mars guy? He's the one that's trying to put us on Mars, right?
Yeah, I got all sorts of SpaceX theories going on too. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Well, we learned about that not too long ago about the MK Ultra and how under MK. So now you have to wonder, right? What is
Hmm.
the overall project that we are falling under with a lot of these little side projects, like the stuff that Elon Musk is working on, the stuff that Bigelow's working on, the stuff
Hmm.
that, like when you start looking at all these little subcontracts or sub projects, what is
Right.
the major one? What is MK current? Like, what's the current TSS program that's being developed that is requiring all these different billionaires uh, to do these side projects like the modular moon and
Yeah,
Mars
that's a good point,
colonization
huh?
things. So what
Yeah,
I
that's
wonder,
interesting.
and with the creation of the Space Force and the various different space programs that we're doing right now, like what is it? I actually just read not too actually earlier today, as a matter of fact, there was a retired Air Force general who came out and said that there was teleportation technology, right, that they have currently, and we have that technology. So I mean, there's all this stuff, and he says that you can transport from one place on Earth to another, and it's always a little bit. I'm always a little bit skeptical when anybody says, "Hey, we have this," or "There is this that exists," unless,
Especially teleportation, like that was
well,
something I recall a video on YouTube that I watched, the Kyrgyz, you know what I'm talking about,
yeah, no, I know
and
what you're talking about.
they explained that it's like not possible, like teleportation isn't possible,
But they also describe
and I believe them.
the benefits of they also describe the benefits of socialism and
Yeah, that's true.
universal
That's true.
basic income. So you got to remember that those
Good
guys,
point.
they answer to a certain population. They're like Bill Nye, except
They're probably filthy
for,
long hairs, is what you're saying.
yeah, and I think that they're a little bit like Bill Nye in that they can be bought easily.
Hmm.
And if
Right.
somebody comes along and says, "Hey, here's what I need you to do. This is what I need you to talk about," and then they come out with something like sex junk or whatever, like Bill Nye did.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so I
Yeah.
think that applies to them. I think that they're not willing to move out onto the limb quite like we are as far as curiosity. They can only give us what they know for sure, and they're also beholden to certain government funding and that sort of thing. That's the
Yeah, I'm
problem with
sure
a lot
there's
of
things they have to
scientists.
withhold from us too, right? There has to
Sure.
be things that they go, like I always wonder about that, like if it turns out like the world really is ending or something, like how soon would we know? Like would they wait until like 3 days before,
I
before the
don't
world
think
ends?
we
They're
will
like,
I
by
hope
know.
the
they
way,
just let it go. Just let it
know
go.
Yeah,
It's
I don't
fine.
think I
know
don't think
this for a
we'll
while.
ever know. I think it'll happen. I had a dream. So again, we're talking about dreams, right? I didn't take my medication. It was the night that the power was out, and I fell asleep watching King of the Hill because I have my little iPad with its own little mobile network on it, and so I was watching King of the Hill, and I fell asleep, and I had this horrible dream that my youngest son and I were at a camp, and I had gone to do some work or whatever, like gather something or whatever, just to help out the other volunteers that were there, and we saw a rocket coming in, and then it hit, and like I was right there, like at ground zero, right, and
Hmm.
I felt the burn, I felt the explosion, I felt it all, and it was like the most terrible fear that I've had in a long
It's like
time,
that
especially when a
scene on
dream.
T2 Judgment Day. That's what I picture, the scene on
Yeah, except
T2.
I was like, it was too late. Like it happened so quick because it was the missile was right there, and
Mm.
so I had, I feel like that's what it's going to be like. I think like we won't know anything because it'll all happen so quickly. Once the missiles, I mean, if it's like a 3 day out thing, it won't matter because if it's 3 days out and they can prevent that sort of thing. But if it's like an instantaneous thing, which I think is
Yeah.
what it will be with the
Yeah.
Assured Destruction Act and all that, I think it'll just be one person kicks it off, and then everything else kind of happens just real quick. We might
Right.
have like 10 minutes, but I mean that's it.
I
I
always
think.
think that if anything, we get hit with like a meteor or something, and it just like obliterate everything on Earth. It's
Well,
like,
you
is
see
that
the
happens? You know?
yeah. Well, it happened 65 million years ago, but
Yeah.
and the only thing that survived were the reptilians. They they
Yeah. The reptilians.
we hear about
Yeah.
they actually have a department in NASA that's in charge of the near Earth objects, that it's called the NEO group, but it's near Earth objects, And they keep track of all the asteroids that are near us or that come within our path or that are going to be within our path, and the ones that are dangerous and that sort of thing. They have them all categorized and labeled, and they know exactly where they are at all times and when they're going to be entering our area. But apparently Jupiter's been kicking a lot of asteroids at us lately, which is some bullshit, and I I encourage Jupiter to stop that, lest they feel the full force of the United States military.
Right.
I'm one of those guys in the backwoods. Well, they just don't understand the powers that the United States has.
Yeah.
But no, they. I think we would know for the most part. Most asteroids they talk about. I mean, you see it in the news all the time. They're like, not like the regular news, but like the interesting news, that the sort of stuff that we read. They talk about all these near Earth objects that are going to be within our area. Or they're going to be coming within us astronomically close, which really means like hundreds of millions of miles. But they're like, well, we need to pay attention because this particular asteroid is going to be 100 million miles from Earth, and we need to be careful. Not like we can do anything, not like we can change the trajectory of Earth or anything, but be on the
Bruce
lookout.
Willis and Owen Wilson up there to go take care of it.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Owen Wilson? Was he in that?
No, it was Ben Affleck.
Was it Ben Affleck?
It was.
I feel like Owen Wilson was in it.
He might have.
Was he in He was in Armageddon.
You're
I
thinking
think.
of no. You are actually thinking of Steve Irwin.
Was it Steve? Oh yeah. Was it? No.
Go ahead, Yakov. Let's get back to the Skywalker Ranch.
As we get railed. Yeah, Skywalker Ranch.
So we're at 2005. George Knapp and Colm Kelleher, I'm going to throw that in there, co-published the book Hunt for the Skinwalker, which introduces Skinwalker Ranch to the mass public. So that's when it hit the big time. Then 2007, an unnamed agent from the DIA, I keep forgetting what that stands for, but I have it written down somewhere. The
Department
DIA.
of Intelligence Agency?
It is the Defense Intelligence Agency.
That's right.
I was going to
So,
say do it yourself.
So an unnamed agent from the DIA contacts Bigelow and requests to see the ranch in person. Bigelow obliges, and the agent has a personalized close encounter on the ranch. He then reports this experience to his superiors, which was the initial catalyst for Senator Harry Reid's appropriating $22 million for the study of Skinwalker Ranch. And this is like on the books now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's fascinating about Harry Reid is that he was the one who created the nuclear option, right? Where you could change the rules with only 50%, and then that's how come Trump was able to get like a record 100 and whatever now judges that he's appointed, and the Democrats are obviously furious, but it was their majority leader who actually implemented that rule. So it's one of those situations where, like, if you look at politics now, all the stuff that they're throwing a fit about is stuff that they implemented in the past. So like Biden and his not putting in a judge on an election year. This nuclear option was Harry Reid. The impeachment stuff that they're doing in the Senate right now, they're going by the Bill Clinton rules, which were created by and approved by the Democrats. So like all this stuff that they're bitching about right now is stuff that they were actually ultimately responsible for in the past, and now they're changing the course on their opinion of it. And many of them are still the same people who were there for all that stuff. So anyways, Yakov, go ahead. I'm sorry. I wanted to interject that.
Then in 2015, Tom DeLonge forms To the Stars Academy, and utilizing a lot of the same people who are these former Defense Department people, the people who were contractors researching in Skinwalker Ranch, and that's where To the Stars Academy came from. Are you guys familiar with that?
No.
I know that
Tom DeLonge. Hollywood.
Tom DeLonge is actually the former lead singer, one of the former lead singers of Blink-182. He used to play the guitar. Mark Hoppus was the bassist. Now they switched it out with the fella from Alkaline Trio, Matt. What the hell's his name? But anyways, Tom DeLonge used to be a guitarist and lead singer on Blink-182.
Matt LeBlanc.
And he left. No, that's a different guy. That's from Party of Five. But he left Blink-182 to go do this band called Angels and Airwaves, and which he sings about aliens and shit. But then like he also started this whole ufology studies. Like that's what he was doing, was he got into ufology. And the
More than
problem
studying disclosure. is the important thing.
That's right. He's trying to get all that information out, but so is John Podesta, unfortunately. But then John Podesta didn't deliver. And the problem I have with Tom DeLonge is like it seems like he plays clickbait in real life, and like he always talks about, well, we've got a big disclosure coming, we've got a big thing coming, and we're excited to talk about it on Monday, you know. And then it's like, if you had something big, just release it, man, because you got to realize the sort of people that you're going up against are the sort of people that will have you killed in a maximum security, under constant surveillance,
exactly,
you know, sort of thing. So if you really had something worth disclosing, you need to spit it out, which leads me to believe you don't have anything worth discussing. And he never disappoints in that. Like whenever he does
Joe
deliver
Rogan interview?
No, I didn't, because at that point I've already been burned too many times by Tom DeLonge. Was it? Explain to me, was there anything worthwhile that came from it?
Well, most Joe Rogan interviews are like 3 hours long.
Right.
This one was about an hour long. And he kept saying, like, oh, I can't talk about that. I can't talk about this. And here's my biggest problem is, like, they were asking, like, why you? Why Tom DeLonge? He's like, well, I have a history of interfacing with the public, and I communicate real well with people. But, like, first of all, you're not communicating well on this goddamn podcast. And second of all, I've never heard you say goddamn thing except, like, singing in your songs.
All the
so why
small
you?
things, true care.
Like, Blink 182 sucks. I don't care who you are. I don't care who agrees.
I liked it. I used to like them. I don't like
Damn
the new
It.
stuff.
I'll listen to Damn It over
Damn
and
It's
over
pretty
again.
good. And then I also liked Cheshire Cat was okay. I mean, they had a couple good ones, Cheshire Cat or Buddha, whichever one you prefer, whichever version you preferred. But then also, like, Enema of the State was kind of like my limit, because they went a different direction with it. But I got a kick out of that album. It was very silly, and it was fun, and it was upbeat, and it was easy to kind of, like, you know, it's easy to get your groove on too. But
get a blowjob too from some girl.
I mean, that's what you were doing. I mean, that was back in '99 that came out. So, yeah.
So this Academy of the Stars, is it like Planet Hollywood or something? Like, it sounds like some bullshit.
Well, it seems like it's like, I don't even know. It seems like some sort of like government op, but like it's not that at all. It's definitely a private thing, but it's using all of these government people. And then, like, when they show videos and, like, this is the aliens, this is the spacecraft, they're showing a video that it's agreed that, like, this is a weird video, but these are things that have been around for like 5 years. And, like, now they're just claiming them as their videos for disclosure. And it's usually like orbs, like, over the ocean or something that the Navy is tracking. There's some really cool video of this, some really good stuff. Now, like, my whole problem is, I agree, like, that he doesn't seem to have anything. Then, like, when he's asked, like, how did you get in the spot? Like, he said he wrote a book about aliens. I think it was a fictional book, but he was applying things that were supposed to be like what he's learned about UFOs over the years.
So it's like L. Ron Hubbard, right?
I was gonna say, like,
Earth.
just gonna say like L. Ron.
That's a great way to go with all of this. Because I think he wrote this book, then the government started contacting him, and then they started this whole fucking thing. So is he just a fucking dupe?
So personally, I think we're going back to the MK Ultra thing here, because a lot of those sub projects were contracted out to private organizations, right? So again, is this Space Academy, which sounds like a front for a pedophile type thing, where they're like, "Hey, come to space camp, and we definitely want to diddle your beehole," but like. Maybe it's part of that, and maybe it falls under that Bigelow's category. Like, he's a different sub project, or maybe they're tied together. Because I mean, we did, like I said, we talked about all the different sub projects that were somewhat interesting. A lot of the ones that you didn't hear about when I was talking about them. I mean, there were 149 of them. I couldn't talk about them all, nor would I, because some of them were boring as fuck. And like, some of them I think were contract. I mean, we again find ourselves wondering, like, is Tom DeLonge one of these subcontracted sub-projects?
You take all of these things you wonder about to the Stars Academy and apply that to Skinwalker Ranch.
How is this connected to, like, actual Skinwalkers though? Like is it just like,
this is a fucking government psyop?
Run by I
joke about
the paranormal string theory that Dave Outlandish is trying to figure out, because I called him out on it. I was like, I was like, oh, you're trying to determine the paranormal string theory here. And he's like, no, 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 no. And then the next thing he comes on and he's like science, philosophy,
Connected, yeah.
Paranormal. And so I'm like, that's what you're doing. You're doing exactly that. So is the Skinwalker, and I think part of the string theory in actual quantum physics is trying to determine whether or not gravity is its own particle and calling it a graviton. But is gravity caused by this particle called gravitron, which is also a fun ride at the carnival that you'll puke if you go on.
And a transformer, Megatron became Galvatron at some point.
Well, that's a different guy. You're thinking of Owen Wilson, but but no, part this all kind of comes together. We're talking about, like you said, back in the 1900s, it was cryptids or weird kind of guys showing up on the door, and then you've got aliens, and then you've got cryptids, and then you've got kind of weird people who could be any number of things. Are these all tied together? Are they all the same thing? And kind of what Matt Squatch says when he comes on, where he's like, I think they're all the same thing. Or I think there's a possibility that there are, and especially with the overlap, we talked about the Fleshgate, the Rake, the Wendigo, the Skinwalker, all this overlapping. Are these just the same thing that people are describing differently? Do they take different forms?
Oh yeah, that's a good. That's good. And
there is truth to a lot of these weird things that happen in the Four Corners area. The reason I'm guiding you through this timeline, we go into Skinwalker Ranch because it's the most popular Skinwalker topic. When you go through the timeline, it starts to seem like a damn government psyop, and it starts to seem like they are conducting experiments on people there, tricking people into thinking that they're seeing things, just like they tricked Tom DeLonge into believing that he's part of fucking alien disclosure,
or that he was a good musician, right?
Exactly.
Classic.
I guess what I'm getting at is that there is so much to all of these stories, but when you go and start Googling about Skinwalkers, all you see is the ranch. You see all these books, and then you start to see, let me get to this next thing. 2015, Jeremy Corbell creates the website huntfortheskinwalker.com with the purpose to produce a documentary on Skinwalker Ranch, aided by his advisor and mentor, George Knapp. 2016, Skinwalker Ranch is sold for the rumored amount of $4.5 million to an undisclosed buyer who operates under the corporation Adamantium Holdings, which is just a real estate.
Adamantium, like Wolverine?
Yeah, that's the name. And then in 2017,
that's not like a real thing, though, right? Adamantium isn't real.
I have no idea. In 2017,
the
name Skinwalker Ranch was filed for trademark through Justia Trademarks. The trademark was issued in 2018. So this whole fucking thing, I feel like from the books onward, from 1996 onward, it's all a money-making thing, while the government is testing, they're doing experiments on people who think they're working there monitoring paranormal activity, when really I think it's some sort of MK Ultra thing to experiment on people. And I think that's what To the Stars Academy is, and that's why all the same people are involved.
Those damn reptilians.
Maybe they're just trying to become skinwalkers themselves.
I just think it's an attempt to get all of these weird things that happen in the Four Corners area, from Dogman to UFOs to underground bases to all of these things. You put them under the same umbrella and you monetize that motherfucker. And that property that Bigelow bought for $200,000, he just fucking sold for $4.5 million just because they renamed the fucking ranch.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're doing some clandestine operation where you're experimenting on humans, you wouldn't call it experimenting on humans research center. You'd call it something like the Academy of the Star, something that's more what's the word?
Friendly or public relations.
Yeah,
whatever. Well,
with less of a shitty connotation.
You see, Master Roshi said that his previous Tom DeLonge's previous stuff filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, because he'd made all these promises, didn't deliver, whatever. I'm sure that had something to do with it. I mean, you can't just keep making promises and not delivering, unless you're the Democrat Party. But no.
We're the Republican Party.
Come on,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Goodness gracious. But I mean, I'm talking Baltimore, talking Detroit, talking all them.
Talking Israel.
Oh no,
Sorry,
he went there. But also, but they said that this new Academy of the Stars seems to be a scam to pay off the debts of the previous venture. And one thing that I learned from listening, and this will appease our liberal audience, I finished reading Art of the Deal, right? And part of that, a lot of that book explains how Trump was able to, in the 80s, during like the hostile takeover stage of big business, which is again, that's something that I had to learn about too in business school, was during the 80s there was that huge hostile takeover business where people were just buying out stock and buying and selling stock. These are all intangible, nothing products, right? Like you're not really buying anything, you're just moving money around. And a lot of the things that he was doing, like he would buy properties without actually paying anything for it. He would never go on the hook for anything. So what he would do was he would go make a deal with a guy saying, hey, I'll buy this property for X amount of dollars, contingent on whether or not I can get these other things to work. And he'd have like 8 other things that he needed to work out. And then he'd go to the next guy and he'd say, hey, I'll make this deal with you if you're willing to, contingent on this, and this, and this. So it, like all these deals that he made were based on whether or not he could make other things happen. And the other things that he needed to make happen, he was like using them with the same idea, like, hey, as long as these other things work out. So really his deals were, and this is why he is like this master deal maker, is like he never went on the hook for anything. He would make deals based on other possible deals, and these other possible deals he would do the same thing to, thereby creating this big long string of stuff that was basically meaningless if one person dropped out. And then by the end of it, everybody was happy. But in reality, he had put nothing into it other than talking to these people. And then he would make it happen. He would deliver, and then he would make like this big, huge kickback on everything. So, like it's kind of like that with the government, is like all this stuff, like it's just money making. It's cheating the systems, multiple systems, in order to move money from one place to another and take advantage. Just like political, when you see somebody running for political office and you're like, there's no way that person will win, and they know it, but what they need to do is they run their campaign, and it's not like they get to keep their money. They have a foundation that they also own, and the money that goes from the campaign can either go to the RNC or the DNC, or it can go to a private foundation or whatever, private charitable foundation. And then they put it into, say, the Clinton Foundation or the Trump Foundation, or the Bernie Sanders just fucking buys houses with his money. But but yeah, they do all that. And then they come away rich, having just run a campaign and made all this money off of the public. And then they get to keep all the money in their foundation. It's all very, very shady. And once people start to like look into that, it's very easy to become or to lose any and all trust in the in the government and in any kind of major influencers like that. You
start to realize why, like, when they lose $3 trillion at once, it's like not a big deal to them. Like, the fuck is that? They're still eating caviar and shit off the naked lady or whatever. I don't know.
Sounds like a good life.
Megabit Banshee mentioned one of my favorite movies, Cabin in the Woods. That's actually, if you've never watched Cabin in the Woods,
observation.
You need to definitely watch that movie because it's such a fun movie. And like the previews didn't do it any justice, because like you see what it's about and you're like, oh, that just seems like every other movie. But it's like, I promise you, if you've never watched Cabin in the Woods, I won't spoil it, and I hope that nobody else does. But like, it's not what you think it is. And
you watch the first half of the movie thinking it's something else entirely. It's good, but then it's like
and then it just goes, it's totally a different thing. Kind of like Full Metal Jacket, how like the beginning you're like, oh, this is a movie about basic training, and then all of a sudden the rest of the movie is about the actual war. It's like, it's almost like 2 different movies is what Cabin in the Woods. And Cabin in the Woods really is more like 40, 50 different movies. Like once you really, like if you really want to split hairs. But yeah, that's a great parallel to draw there. So anyways, go ahead, Yakov, continue.
Well, I basically hit the end of that. I think the ranch was all about making money, and it was about branding and getting a little government experimentation in while they were at it. I think that's something the government does. Are you guys familiar with Bill Cooper?
Is he the guy he had that Hanging with Mr. Cooper show?
Yeah, no, we talked
Not
about
that
him.
guy.
We talked about him last week with I mean, you would know, Yakov. You were there. We
Yes,
talked
I
about
was.
him last week a little bit. William Cooper. He's the guy who wrote Beyond or Behold the Pale
Oh,
Horse.
yeah. The Pale Horse. I remember that.
Which is a
Now,
great book. Like, I highly recommend it to anybody who hasn't read it. It's free. You can get it online. Most books are free now. You can just go on and type whatever, and hell, I might even like put it on the Google Drive and make it so that you can download it if you haven't read it.
I appreciate you posting that David Icke link last week because
Hey.
I got all those books. That's awesome.
Right on. Which
But,
I did, by the way. Anybody who didn't notice that, like, if you go into the description of last week's episode, the Reptids one or the Reptoids one, I posted a link where it has all of David Icke's books, and you can download them for free. So, in many different languages, as it were. So,
Right.
Reason I bring up the reason I bring up Bill Cooper is because I think he was like the precursor to Tom DeLonge's like whole psyop thing that's going on right now. Bill Cooper, in his book, he wrote about how when he was a Marine, or what was he? He was in the Navy. He was in the Navy, and during Vietnam, he was stationed out in the ocean somewhere on some carrier, and he was like a lookout, and he's looking through the binoculars, and suddenly a hole opens up in the ocean, and something flies out of it. A metallic orb flies out of the ocean. And he's watching it. He keeps describing it as tumbling on its axis lazily. That's the direct quote he uses from the book. And I was never sure what that meant exactly.
An orb?
Yes.
Isn't
Yes.
it
It
an
was
orb?
a circular craft that came out of the ocean. So
Hmm.
he saw that. He's watching it for a while. He's just watching it zip around. And it's not moving like any aircraft he's ever known. He was very familiar with the aircraft at the time. And it fucking came out of the ocean, for God's sake. So the thing's doing its thing. It's flying around, it's zipping here and there. It's tumbling on its axis lazily, quote unquote. Then a hole opens up in the ocean and it flies right back in. Now, when he got off, he had to go see his superior immediately, at which point they asked him what he saw. And he told them what he saw. And at that point, his superior got more angry and was yelling louder than he's ever heard in his life. And then he got calm for a second. He asked him again, "What did you see?" Then he said nothing. And with that, he
all
was
right,
let
good.
away. He was
Yeah.
let to do his own
Yeah.
thing.
That's what they do. That's how it works. And here's the thing about
Yeah,
a lot of
that's-
people
yeah.
forget that, like, the ocean, and I say this probably, I think every week, like, the ocean, 5% of it has been, between 5 and 10% of it has been explored by man.
Yeah.
The other
that's-
95% of it, it remains unexplored. Like, we don't know what's down there. And there's
There's a lot of
difficult
weird
to.
shit going on down there. I just watched a video recently of like the weirdest creatures in the ocean that they recently found, and there is some like bugged out things, like luminescent creatures that like glow, and like jellyfish that are immortal. Like there's some crazy shit, dude, like in the ocean. And it's like you said, like we haven't seen any of that crap. Like we don't know what's going on down there, and there's like a surface that's like way below what we can even reach. You know, like a human can't go beyond a certain point because their head will explode from the compression, right? Isn't that what'll happen? Like,
Yeah, pretty much.
like it's so like your head will
You,
explode.
you ever see the creatures from down there? When they're down there, they're like regular fish. But when you pull them up here, they just get all bloated and puff out and get all stupid looking because the pressure. They're made for the pressure.
All right.
So yeah, it's weird. Get back
Scary
into
stuff.
it.
I have terrible thalassophobia. So, like, the ocean itself terrifies me. And I don't know why. It's not like I ever had a bad experience on the
Me
ocean. I
too.
used to swim in it when I was a kid, but now, like, I can't even imagine. I freak out in any kind of open body of water. If it's unless it's like a swimming pool or whatever. I'm good in swimming pools, great in swimming pools, but like once you get me into the water, I have an irrational fear of sharks, of any kind of like water creature, really. And
Right.
yeah, it's some scary stuff out there. But
Mm.
all right,
Well, the
yeah,
thing
Kevin,
is,
what else you got?
When Bill Cooper was writing all of this, he took it very seriously. When you read his book, he like believed these things fully. By the end of his life, when he ran afoul of the U.S. government, by that time he was thinking he was lied to the whole time, and he was led to believe things that were just the government messing with him. That this was government technology. They were using him as a conduit to test the waters in the outside world, to tell them things that weren't really true, to see how they would react to it, specifically about the alien menace or whatever. but it seems like that's something they do. And I think that's something that's going on today in the Four Corners. It's probably going on right now in Skinwalker Ranch with some poor sap.
I just want to get some clarification real quick before we finish up the show here. Is I want to know how, like at the beginning of the show, we were talking about these Native American skinwalkers that turn into the speed of a puma and the form of an elephant and whatever. But how is that connected to this conspiracy with the lead singer of Blink-182?
Trying to get there. I'm saying the popularization of everything, like the internet influence of it all. It does. What I was trying to get at is that the internet and popular culture has taken hold of the Skinwalker thing.
Remember,
like that's where it is now.
Remember, and I got to interrupt. I do because remember Pizzagate, right? Like that was this is one of my favorite conspiracies because Pizzagate was not about what the media made it out to be. And then obviously there was a lot of stuff going on, like the guy who went in and shot up the place, who's actually like the son of a politician and also was an actor who had an IMDb page. So like, and then you never heard about him after he was supposedly indicted or cited with reckless discharge of a firearm or whatever. But like, the media turned it, they bastardized Pizzagate and made it so that it was so unbelievable that anybody, like if you said, well, I believe that's true, and then all of a sudden people are like, oh, you believe that Hillary Clinton is actually a pedophile who whatever, and John Podesta, her campaign manager, is actually like a Satanist and this and that and the other, which are all true. But that was like how they fronted it. But in reality, Pizzagate was this guy Alefantis, who is for whatever reason a like top 10 influential person in Washington D.C. And he's a pizza shop owner. And it turns out that this pizza shop, like if you look at his Instagram and the pizza shop's Instagram and stuff like that, before he took all that stuff down, had like a bunch of stuff about pedophilia. And then he was talking about how like one week he's talking about how he stores all their tomatoes fresh in the basement in these that he pickles them for the year so that he can store them and use them later on throughout the whole season or throughout the whole year, even though tomato season is however many months out of the year. He saves all these homegrown tomatoes in his basement. And then as soon as he's accused of having like some kind of torture chamber in the basement, he's like, oh yeah, we don't have a basement. And it's that sort of stuff. And then there's like this kill room in an adjacent building. Like, and this is all stuff that they've found exists. And then as soon as Pizzagate is brought up, he's like, well, none of that stuff exists. And we have evidence that it does. But on top of that, then all of a sudden they change it into this story about, well, John Podesta is personally in there murdering kids and sacrificing them to alien gods and goddesses. And you're like, that's not what Pizzagate was about. It was about something. It was about pedophilia. Yeah. But it's not necessarily about those two in particular. But there is like a pedophile ring in Washington, D.C., which is undeniable in the political elite as well as the Hollywood elite. And we're now seeing this now that Donald Trump is the president, and they're actually starting to crack down on this sort of thing. Yeah. Before, it was just totally forgiven. I mean, you can even hear John Podesta, like recordings of John Podesta, like spanking kids in this pizza place. And like, it's weird stuff. But I mean, like the media turned it into this totally different thing. And that's what happens. The same thing happens with the internet. All of a sudden, as soon as the internet gets it or the media gets it or someone who wants to change the narrative gets it, all of a sudden they add to it, take away from it, morph it into this other thing.
There's a weird dimension to this in particular, because what happens when there's no Navajos left, as like would be the trend? What happens when only George Knapp's works are left? What is a Skinwalker then? When everybody believes that's what it is that what it becomes? Right.
Well, that's kind of what Dave Outlandish was saying the other day. Was like you can like create something by just making it with your mind. What did he call it? Your
Grigori. That's what I would call it.
Yeah, there was like a term that he kept using. It was like nominal and what was it, Tom? Do you remember? Nominal, phenomenal, something like that. I know it was like a ridiculous amount of big words.
You gotta hook me up with this guy.
Yeah. So
That's probably even better.
so Fleshgate is like a conspiracy surrounding these Skinwalker and the Blink-182 guy, right?
Hey, if that's what you're taking from this, that's fine by me. It's all fake anyway.
But what I'm confused about is just the terminology. I'm just trying to get it clarified.
What I'm saying is that like popular culture is deciding what a Skinwalker is now. There's no Navajo. There's like no Navajos left, and the ones that are left ain't telling you what the hell a Skinwalker is.
Oh yeah.
So
okay. Oh, I see.
going forward, like
Yeah.
this is the mythology, and the government's all tied up in it, and it's all monetized now. It's just weird. It's very weird, but I don't know if it makes it any less legitimate.
So it's kind of like Freddy Krueger on Freddy versus Jason, where they just like stopped talking about Freddy Krueger and they didn't allow anyone to talk about Freddy Krueger, and they blacked everything out of the newspapers and out of any kind of, because back when it was like newspapers, no internet.
Yeah.
They blacked everything out of the microfiche and all the old newspapers and all that, got rid of any evidence of Freddy Krueger, and nobody could talk about him, so nobody was having nightmares anymore. And they locked away all the people who did have nightmares, and they started giving them Hypnosil and wiped their memories and all that shit. So that's how they got rid of Freddy Krueger. So is this the Navajo's way of getting rid of their Freddy Krueger?
Maybe that's a really good thought. Actually.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, I think.
Suddenly we start talking about something totally different when we say Skinwalker. We're not bringing him on anymore.
But we're talking about it now, so we're making it relevant again. So maybe he'll show up, knock on the door. Or it'll be a chick that turns into like a,
do some skin clapping.
Platypus. Yeah, she turns into I don't know, an ostrich.
You know what? You know what it is now. You know what it is now. That's what this whole transgender thing is. They're now gender walkers, right?
Oh,
like a chick who turns into a dude or a dude who turns into a chick. That's what it is now. We've actually turned. This is like life imitating art, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, we've turned this this interesting concept of Navajo skinwalkers into a real thing, and it's just a social justice topic now for people
to identify as dolphins and shit.
Yeah, to pretend that they're pants. You know what? And that's the problem with the whole transgender movement is it's become like an attention-seeking situation where they're like, I'm not interesting enough of my own merits. I have to now label myself as this pansexual, he, him, non-binary, who identifies as a male, female, intersex. Like I have to have some kind of super, and it's like, and it used to be just like, hey, I like to dress up as a woman. Like that was the thing.
Yeah,
and now like people are like,
if you want to replace your personality with some degenerate bullshit, just start smoking weed. It's a lot easier.
Yeah, it'll save you a lot of money in the long run and keep you from.
Or watch Bang Bros.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, with that, I think let's go ahead and thank our guest, Mr. Yakov. Yakov Alive.
Hit on my channel, Yakov Alive. I've got another channel, Skinwalker Tapes Archive, teespring.com/stores/Yakov-Alive. Buy my merch. On Twitter at Yakov Radomski. I think that's all I got. Thanks to everyone who showed up in chat. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Roshi.
Yeah, thanks guys for joining us today. I think today was a super informative episode. Had a lot of fun. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. If you didn't enjoy it, hit the dislike button. That's cool. Leave a comment. Yeah, or that. Share it with your friends. If you learned something, tell us what tell us what we can do better in the future. Ask questions in the comments, and we'll address them next time.
I just want to hit this one comment. How about those black-eyed kids? I don't listen to hip hop.